There are many operators in Rainbow Six Siege, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. While a select few operators are very strong, some are deemed situational.
Situational pig.
So as you can see, the word situational is thrown around quite a lot. But what does it mean? Well, that's what today's video is about. Defining what a situational operator means, showing how to play some of these operators, explaining why these operators excel in certain scenarios, and also explaining some context where they're not the best. Before we start, if you appreciate this type of content, consider liking and subscribing to this channel, as it helps out a lot. Alright, without further ado, let's dive right into it. So first of all, what is a, quote, situational operator? Well, here's my definition. A situational operator is someone whose efficiency highly depends on these three factors: map design, playstyle of your teammates, and operator choice of your opponents. So let me explain these three separately. For map design, every map in Rainbow Six Siege is different, but they are all composed of different doors, angles, reinforceable walls, corridors, the list goes on. Some operators might excel in smaller, more constrained objectives, while others might be better on objectives with longer angles. For the playstyle of your teammates, some operators depend on good teammate coordination and other teammate abilities to improve the chances of winning. However, some operators can play more of a solo playstyle. And finally, for the operator choice of your opponents, every operator can counter a strategy or two. However, there are some operators with niche abilities that are used for very specific strategies. So all in all, if the operator's efficiency highly depends on at least one factor, then I consider them to be situational. That's why operators like Mute and Ace are not considered situational, since they can play on virtually any map and any round. However, an operator like Caveira is usually considered very situational, as her efficiency relies on attackers misdroning and not being that coordinated. Today, I will cover 5 operators that are generally considered good, but situational at the same time. For each operator, I'll assign a number for the 3 factors, from 1 to 10. 1 meaning that the factor isn't important, and 10 meaning that the factor is very important. So the first operator I want to cover is Castle. Castle is a very good operator for wasting attacker utility and time. However, I believe his biggest strength is redesigning the objective and cutting off angles that are advantageous to attackers. So because of that, he depends greatly on the objective layout, but also a bit on other factors. The first castle setup that comes to mind is Cafe First Floor. First, people usually put a castle barricade on the bar double door and then make it rotate right next to it. Why? Because barricading the double door prevents the attackers from getting a nice angle from bar all the way to small bakery. After that, people castle barricade the coat window, make shotgun holes on the right kitchen wall, and will reinforce the left kitchen wall. Why? Because it delays attackers from going into coat quickly, and there's also a nice angle you can hold from coat that covers one part of prep. For the next 2 castle barricades, people like to put them in small bakery door and exterior window and make it rotate here. Why? Because it prevents attackers from destroying the outside window quickly, and it also prevents them from looking at bakery from the outside. Another example would be Coastline for the hookah and billiards objective. You can block 3 outside windows: the hookah window, the courtyard window, and the pool window. However, for the last castle barricade, you can put it on the aqua double door and make it rotate right next to it. So why do people like to do that? Well, once again, you're redesigning the objective to make it advantageous for you. The castle barricade here is a 3-for-1 deal. It prevents attackers from getting a nice angle from outside aqua, from luggage, and it also makes it difficult for them to enter pool quickly and go for the default plan. So these are 2 site setups where I see castle a lot. However, maybe this is just from personal experience, but it feels like castle only gets chosen if you're defending a specific site. And although there are castle setups for every map, I feel people are generally more comfortable and effective with the popular ones. Which brings up my next point. For teammate playstyle, your teammates need to be on board with your castle setup. When you redesign the objective with castle, you need to defend it in a different way. And some teammates might get confused, especially if they think the castle barricade is in their way. So there needs to be some sort of teammate coordination, but as long as you don't block them from roaming or moving, you should be fine. For the opponent playstyle, Castle has a few counters like Ash, Sledge, Zofia, frag grenades, etc. However, I feel like this plays into Castle's playstyle of wasting attacker utility. If the attackers bring a bunch of destructibility, then they're less likely to bring strong intel operators like Dokkaebi, Snake, Lion, so on and so forth. And even if the castle barricades do get destroyed, which usually that happens, well, you got to waste attacker utility, and you just end up defending as if you didn't bring castle. So all in all, yes, he does have a few counters, but it's annoying for attackers to bring them. So these are the numbers I'm giving to Castle. As you can see, I think the most important factor is map design, but I feel like he depends a bit on the operators of the other team as well. Moving on to the second operator, we have Monty. So Monty's main strength and purpose is that he's able to take space quickly and generally make defenders uncomfortable. However, the reason why I feel he's situational is because you need to be coordinated with your teammates. But I feel like you can bring him on any map and he'll be useful. The classic example for Monty is when he's used to take control of garage and rafters in Clubhouse. The reason why he's good there is that you can cover the garage door, rafters, the rafters rotate, and the rafters window pretty much all at once. And by being there, he takes space and it allows your teammates to take control of rafters, which is very important while attacking cache and CC. However, if you don't have a teammate around you, then the strategy isn't as efficient. Monty really works best when you have a teammate or two following you. Another example where he's good would be when you're attacking Oregon basement. Someone can bring a Monty and enter from bunker. When defenders set up the site, they usually make head holes here and they'll make a rotate and elbow, so you need to be careful of a couple of angles. But once again, by having a Monty here, it facilitates the entry for your teammates. So for every case, usually the next step is entering the objective and either turtle planting or covering your teammate while they're planting. And usually Monty players will bring in smokes to facilitate the plant. Here are a few things to consider for Monty. Even though I believe you can bring him in any map, there are entries in which you should try to avoid. Monty usually excels when he enters a room that feels tighter and constrained. If a Monty enters a room with a lot of angles, then his efficiency drops because he can't take control of the room as easily. An example of this would be if you were to drop in Cafe New Hatch, because there are a bunch of angles to cover if you drop there. When I see people play Monty for this objective, they'll usually go up white stairs because there are fewer angles to cover there. Regarding opponent operators, I feel like for Monty it's not a very defining factor, but you still need to be careful if there are operators with C4s, and also if there's an Oryx on the other side. So here are the numbers I'm giving to Monty. He might not be considered that situational in the community, but I still included him there because he highly depends on your teammate playstyle. For our next operator, we have Mozzie, a fun but situational operator. I'd say his main role is to prevent attacker intel, but if he does catch a drone or two, then they become great and subtle pieces of intel for Mozzie and his team. Drones are much more discreet than Valk cams, and he's able to move them around the map. Also, he has 4 pests, 2 great guns, a super shorty, and a C4. His kit is great, and in certain scenarios, he brings a ton of value. However, he is, once again, quite situational. Unlike Valkyrie, you have to work to get intel with Mozzie, and it also depends if attackers are droning at all in the prep phase. Some like to just sit and spawn so that they can retrieve it quickly, or some are not even playing at all. But if attackers do drone, then most of the time they're pretty good at avoiding Mozzie's pests. So there are rounds where you're only able to catch 1 drone or no drones at all. So in that case, Mozzie just becomes intel denial, which is fine. But I feel like that way, you're sort of missing out on Mozzie's true capabilities. Regarding counterplay, it's less about the opponent's operators, but more about their drone play. Of course, Mozzie has a few counters like IQ and Thatcher, but most of the time, destroying pests isn't the top priority for attackers. So Mozzie mostly depends on the attackers being carefree with their drones, which is why he feels situational. Moreover, there needs to be some sort of communication with your team. For every Mozzie player out there, I believe they can attest to the fact that they've gotten their drones destroyed by their teammates a couple of times. But apart from that, you can play Mozzie in a solo playstyle and also with your teammates. So it doesn't really matter who your teammates bring or what their playstyle is, you can bring a Mozzie and people generally will be happy. What's pretty cool about Mozzie is that the map and objective don't really matter that much. Regardless if you're defending a basement site or a top floor site, there are many ways you can position your Mozzie drones. You can be aggressive and drone for yourself, or you can scout enemy players for your teammates, or you can place them in corners to gather some intel and maybe get a C4 elimination. With all of these possibilities, I think he's a pretty fun operator, and for that reason alone, you should play him more. So these are the numbers I'm giving to Mozzie. Just a slight modification for the third factor, it's less about the operators themselves but more about their drone play, which is why I included playstyle. Moving on, we have Brava. She is a very creative operator in Rainbow Six Siege, but she is quite situational. If defenders bring a bunch of annoying utility, she can quickly turn the tides of the round all by herself, especially if she is able to hack Evil Eyes or Yokai drones. It makes the round rather interesting, to say the least. Typically, I don't choose Brava off the get-go. I like to drone first, scan the enemies, and see if they're bringing a bunch of annoying utility. And if they are, then I consider playing Brava. So the opponent playstyle and operator choice is a defining factor when playing Brava. To prove this point, take this hypothetical scenario. If defenders bring Smoke, Tubarão, Doc, Zami, and Vigil, then her impact drastically falls, as she can only really hack default cams and bulletproof cams if they bring some. Otherwise, the map design really isn't an important factor. However, some maps with sneaky drone holes certainly help her. Let's take Oregon. If defenders are defending topside, then from Main Street, you can move up to the gate and throw your drone up in the sky like this. It'll land next to attic, and from there, you can move up to the drone hole and quickly hack some utility there. Quick side note here. Usually, I throw my drone in the beginning of the round, but I won't start using it until a couple of seconds later. Why? Because defenders are still standing up sight when the round starts, and with no attackers to pressure them, if they see a Brava drone, it's very easy for them to hunt it down. So in this specific example, here's what I would do. I throw my drone near attic, I push, let's say, master bedroom with my teammates, and when it gets contested, that's where I would switch back to my drone and try hacking things. The defender's attention is now preoccupied by the attackers, so it's probably easier to hack things now. And of course, this is only one example, but you can apply this reasoning to any map. The reason why people think she's situational is because defenders are usually pretty good at shooting her drone before she's able to hack anything. So in some cases, unfortunately, she doesn't bring a ton of value. But if she does hack utility, her efficiency is still dependent on how useful the hacked utility is for her and her team. So her potential is directly tied to who defenders bring. And finally, Brava can be picked independently from other operators. She doesn't need a teammate ability to help her out. However, once again, there still needs to be some sort of communication. Similarly to Mozzie, it happens that your teammates will shoot some hacked utility. They don't have bad intentions, it's just hard to break habits. And also, you shouldn't try to drone for too long. You still want to be helping your teammates get eliminations. So personally, I feel like 30 to 40 seconds is plenty enough. So here are the numbers I'm giving to Brava. As you can see, the defining factor is opponent operators. But otherwise, the other factors don't really matter that much. For the final operator of the video, I will cover Clash. Clash is sort of like Monty, but on defense. She's great at taking space, scouting, and generally annoying attackers. In my opinion, she's a more aggressive form of Monty. She's better when playing with teammates, but she can still take down people on her own. She does have quite a few counters though. I feel like Clash excels in basement sites, because usually they feel tighter and less open compared to first floor and second floor sites. One example would be an Oregon basement, where you can use her shield and scout people in bunker, which is frustrating to play against. A thing to consider while playing Clash is that usually, when attackers see a Clash on the other side, they will bring operators to bring her down, since attackers have the advantage of swapping operators in the drone phase, unlike defenders. And if they bring counters and if they're well coordinated, then taking her down is relatively easy. And also, unlike Monty, who is immune to melee hits while fully extended, Clash can't let attackers go near her. Otherwise, they can simply melee her and shoot her leg. With all that being said, this makes it feel like she's more situational than Monty, but she's still a viable pick most of the time. Like I just mentioned, Clash is better if you play with your teammates. You essentially become a live mirror. You get to see where the opponents are, and also teammates can use her shield to peek and get a nice elimination. She's a bit of a double-edged sword though. Her shield is strong and can slow down attackers. However, it's harder for her, compared to Monty, to take her weapon out. You either put the shield on your back, where you have no body cover, or you have to go through an animation to put down the shield and get your weapon, which in live fights can be a bit hard to do. What's nice about her, however, is that you can bait the attackers to use their util, because when her shield is down, grenades and explosives will destroy it. But when she's holding her shield, then she can tank pretty much everything. So here are the numbers I'm giving to Clash. There isn't one factor that stands out, but they're all somewhat important, hence why I find her to be situational. So that concludes our list. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Before I leave, I do want to acknowledge a couple of things. If you don't agree with the numbers I gave to these 5 operators, feel free to let me know in the comments below. And also, if you have other tips to give to these operators that I didn't cover, please let me know too. I might not have covered your favorite situational operator, so if that's the case, you can leave a comment and I might make a part 2 in the future. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.